share my screen. So Nick already covered like the definition, the problem statement, and so on. What is this project about? What were our goal? So I will, here is our team member. I will pass over and go directly to what I have been working on since the beginning of the semester and the conclusion for our paper that we have been working on also since the beginning of this semester. So these parts are where we try to compare our different model output with the human generated output to get a feel of how it will look like in real life. And here was our data set, which Nick already presented, and here is GPT for meaning. So one of the model that I developed were fuzzy matching, which was a model used in the original paper to classify the SCCA filings into different event types. And it was a simple model. What we did was just we put the name of the categories and the lexicon associated to the categories. And based on the lexicon, it computes how similar the lexicon is to the content of the AK, and it gives us different similarity score. Then we have the BERT model, which we fine-tuned, and it is able to look at the context and the different relationship between the words so that it can get a relationship between the text that we personally categorize and the category so that it could reproduce what we did with new output. So here was the different performance metrics that we previously computed. And as you can see, the performance of the GPT-4o mini and BERT were pretty close and better than the fuzzy matching. So at this point, we could conclude that we kind of did what we were expecting. As at the beginning of the semester, our goal was mainly to do better than the paper. The paper was made in 2016, and we felt like since 2016, there have been a lot of sophisticated model that would provide better output than what was in the paper. So we decided to do this classification using the different large language model available on the market. And yes, on this, we did better. Here was a slide about our different advantages and disadvantages that we kind of presented at last conference, and the different resources that we use. As Nick previously said, we had to use the HPC resource from Lehigh to do all this analysis and run. So yes, now this part that I'm going to present is something that I have been working on to provide a strong conclusion to the paper that we have been working on. And the paper mainly discuss about the first part of our project and then a small part discussing about the value of the categorization that we did in the first part and how it can be actually useful even before we start the forecasting phase of this project. So in order to validate the categorization, I showed the potential and the value of one of the category and answer to the question like, can we get something out of the categorization? Can we actually get value before we start the forecasting phase? So I did it by firstly analyze the different category. Then I created portfolio. Then I assess the financial relevance. Let's first start with the analysis. And I saw in the code that Arium is actually there. So it will be a kind of sharing our process project. It will be a kind of sharing our progress since it has been a while since we last meet. Okay, so the goal of this analysis, as I said before, was to validate the categorization by analyzing one of the category. In here, we choose the senior personal change. So I took the top 30 company of the S&P 500 tech sector from 2020 to 2023. I sum up each instances that they had a senior personal change in this time frame and divide it by each of the market caps so that to normalize it so that we could make a good comparison. For example, a company with 10 changes and a market cap of 66 billion would have an index of 0.3. And what is your guess on the performance of each portfolio? Because using that, we create two portfolio. One portfolio where the portfolio that have above to average senior personal changes, and the second one was a portfolio with below to average senior personal changes. And as you can see on this graph that gives the cumulative return of the portfolio and the benchmark, portfolio B, which is the orange line, outperform the benchmark as well as the portfolio that have more than average senior personal changes in the time frame. So from that, one of my assumption was it may be due to the fact that the big players such as Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft are in this portfolio, or it also may be due to the fact that they have below to average senior personal changes. So in order to prove that there is no bias, I took out those different companies. And as you can see on this line, which represent the portfolio B without this big player, it still outperformed the companies that have more than average senior personal changes in the period. So from that, we can infer that leadership stability correlates with better risk-adjusted return and portfolio, the, and senior personal changes could be a meaningful signal. So here is the Sharpe ratio, which show the same output and quantify a little bit more what was showed in the cumulative return, as well as the different Sortino ratio and the maximum drawdown. As for the maximum drawdown, sometimes the maximum drawdown of the portfolio with less senior personal changes was a little bit more aggressive than the one of portfolio A, but the Sortino ratio and the different Sharpe ratio were always higher than the portfolio with more than average senior personal change. So using that, we identified companies that were in portfolio B as more stable. And what is your guess on how this portfolio that we created with those more stable companies did in 2024? And as you can see, portfolio B still outperformed the different portfolio as well as the benchmark. So from that, we can conclude that senior personal change is a signal that can be used in real-world strategy. Here is the different Sharpe ratio, Sortino ratio, as well as maximum drawdown. And as you can see, the one of portfolio B and the portfolio B without the big player always outperform the portfolio that have more than average senior personal changes. So here is a different implication of our result. And I believe with this result, we could conclude the paper on a strong note. However, we take any feedback that could help us make it bigger and more impressive for the paper. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Fatma.